Hi everyone, this is Laura from Into the Moon House, and I'd love to talk more about the themes that you can expect showing up in your life, and especially in regards to the eclipses in Gemini and Sagittarius. If you've been here a long time, then you know that I always channel the information and themes for you, so it helps you make sense of yourself, of the world, and also the people in it. So, the friends, family, what's going on with them on a large level. And one of the things I'd love to talk to you about is globalisation, because that's such a big theme. That is part of what has been happening in 2020. And we've seen what happens when we are having to pause everything. So, that is what we'll talk about. If you're new to me, I'm a spiritual life coach, teacher, and healer. I've been on this path for more than 25 years and have a background in journalism. So I like to get to the heart and the core of things, and then have you decide for yourself, how does this information resonate? How can I utilize the energy coming from the stars and sky? And how can I bring that in my life? So this podcast will be more of a big picture one that will help you understand the themes that society is going through. Because with every eclipse, it really is around society. It is what we see at large. So this is why it's always such a great mirror to see what else is happening around these eclipses in the world. What period of time are we in, and know that it impacts up to 6 months, up to 2 years even from this point in time. So the process is always slow. But the idea is, of course, that it's development, it's progression. It is what life is. One thing becomes another and another and another. Because life is not stagnant, as you know, it's constantly evolving. And for yourself, that is a good thing to know, so you can find your own rhythm and pace in the world. And I love to talk about Gemini, Sagittarius at large. So why those two? Just a very brief explanation around it. It's because the North Node is in Gemini. North Node you can see as the purpose point and direction. This is where we need to head to as society as well. The South Node, which represents the past, karma, is in Sagittarius. So it's not a wonder that the travel industry is so much impacted, because Sagittarius is ruled, or Sagittarius rules travel. And what we see this solar eclipse, the 14th of December, is that we are also birthing a new consciousness. We're birthing a new belief system. So this is old philosophies being able to bring forth something new within you. So belief system relates everything in regards to spirituality is part of that. So new spiritual beliefs or new ways that you want to participate in the world, that will create a certain type of faith. Of course, any type of religion will fit into that, but what we'll see with religion as well, things are changing around that. So if they want to continue like they were, then something needs to be adapted to the current day reality. So why is that? Because I'm going to go back in time a little bit actually to sketch this picture for you. Just imagine that we are going 150 years back in time, and you would not have much visitors in communities, villages, cities. Maybe you were dependent on, the news coming through the Pony Express, for example, if it was the USA, or from travelers. So there wasn't that much, or definitely not at the pace that we're in now. What does that mean? So that means that also all the knowledge that you would take in, so all the news you would hear, would come from the people around you, it would come from the amount of books you had access to, and you had to be quite clever to get the information or get to the understanding that you want. There wasn't this magnificent internet that you could just type in whatever you wanted to know and find it. Maybe you're like, duh, I know that, but really take yourself all the way back in time, because it would mean that the way of living is so different than it is from today. What you believed really comes from, what people are putting in your head, what you're learning, and of course then we also have the own experiences that allow you to actually test if things are true, yes or no. That's the most powerful weapon that you have yourself, is to learn through experience, of course, because what you'll notice is that through experience, it will always call out the expectations you had about a certain situation, the ideas that you had, and it will either turn out way better or not so great, but at least it's going to be very different. So this is the thing of experience. So in these communities, all types of ways of being or ways of living life would show up. And of course, they would never be questioned because it was all part of the community. Everyone did things like they're doing it for a very, very long time. It is only when we learn of different ways of life, different ways of showing up, that the own consciousness is actually getting the opportunity to be expanded. And of course, a lot of the ideas can also come from your connection to source, connection with nature, connection to the own soul. But in general, it is about seeing what else is going on. And you can see these communities as bubbles. So someone comes into that bubble and then has a completely different way of life, maybe believes something completely different if we're talking about religion. And so this, we can think about the missionaries in regards to this, for example. And then they start to bring that message forth. And now everything changes through those interactions. And this is also why knowledge is power, because it has the ability to change things and on a very deep level. And there are core truths and objective truths that you can work with and that are available to you. And I'm going to use a few more examples of disbelief because I think that may be important as well. What we see as society is that we have so much more questioning of information, questioning like who says what, why are they saying that? And because of the internet, this definitely has been speeding up because of also there's so much available. How do you know what is a good source and what isn't? So we have to see where maybe in our life we've been gullible and we just take things for, just take things at face value. On top of that, it's only when the masses start questioning everything that is the most likelihood for change coming in. Of course, the pioneers are the ones that are actually planting the seeds for creation and for change. That eventually, if the masses start seeing a new way or a new consciousness is being birthed in the masses, and everyone is on that same level, that is when things are starting to change. I was going to give you an example of disbelief. Now, just think about I'm going to talk about medicine, actually. I didn't know I was going to do that, but do think about the medical industry. And of course, because the doctor is an authority and hospitals are an authority. And I want to say as well, it's a good thing. You also want to recognize that there's a whole system and years of study and experience behind it. That is where to start. Does that mean that it will cover everything? No, of course not. But so there's a lot of alternative medicine as well. And they will have more holistic information about how the body works, about how food influences the body, about what herbs to use. Now, when we, it depends, but in general, what we can see now in the public is that there's much more openness to at least how we treat our body through food, right? And that there's a direct link to what we put in our body and how we feel and how we show up throughout the day. And I'm from 1976, but I assure you that the focus on food and well-being and what it did for you, it really wasn't that great while I was a teen, and in my 20s as well. I had a lot of people in my school that we didn't think about how food impacted the body. This is something that came later, so you want to be aware of that. So that's my generation that only started to link the food into how you're feeling and into well-being much later. As a whole, you can see this in the amount of organic products and the growth of veganism and other ways of showing up. This is just an example, so I don't want to put a value onto the good or not good, but it does tell you about questioning. It does tell you also around what is normal versus what is actually working. But that's the whole thing with all beliefs. Let's talk about cigarettes, for example. Doctors were smoking. They thought it was great in the beginning. So that's just a case of great marketing, not quite knowing what the effect of something is until it does. And now, of course, we have governments all shutting it down and giving big fines and wanting to stop people from smoking. But this is something, so this is also hindsight. This is a natural evolving of the mind and how things worked. How does this tie in with this belief? Maybe 20 years ago, or maybe just now, you only believe that the doctor is telling the truth, and that's the only opinion you'll take in. Because that is how it works, and you wouldn't believe that how you prepare your food has any impact on how you feel. This belief comes from the mind and mindset. It is not necessarily truth, but this is something to take in. In short, information challenges your belief system, and it challenges also how you make the choices. Where do you get your information from? Says who? Are you listening to the community? Are you listening to the masses? Most people have a tendency to listen to the masses and will only state that things are true when more people are starting to say that. Otherwise, they won't go there. It is a response from your survival brain as well, because you could be excommunicated if you would have done this. When you were, we are very dependent on people in society and in the communities. It was really about cooperation. Now, with the individualism, this, of course, changed on how we're showing up. So it's normal that we've went through individualism as well, because that is how you find yourself if you are not associating with a community that you live in, for example. So what information you take in from who definitely matters. It will show up in your behavior. It will show up in every single decision. So this is why, of course, healing work of the roots of a situation is so important. This is the healing of behaviors that we taken on from family and generations. Generational healing is one of the things I do with really good results in the Akashic healings. And it's also why it's so important to question if you are just doing something on the automatic pilot, or if you have actually made a clear decision on something yourself because that is where the creation starts. That is where you can actively put elements into your life you like to live. So let me come to this belief once again. Sometimes or oftentimes people do not like to believe something simply because it does not match the way they programmed themselves. They were programmed by community, society. And when I say programmed, it's normal to take over behaviors and thoughts of the people around you. But it's only when you start to connect with your own soul that you're going to find out, like, hey, hang on a second, this is true or this is not true for me. This is also when the morals and values and your ethics are going to come into play. What is ethical to you? What is doable to you? What choices are you making? Are you a person that speaks out when only everyone speaks out, or are you someone that speaks out to a whole group of people when another is not being treated right in accordance to your own soul values? And that's the shadow work part that a lot of us are now struggling with. But you'll see many people are speaking out now around what they feel is right and wrong. And that will definitely heighten. But it's also the climate. And the climate, I mean, so this is now, because now everyone is doing it. It will feel safe to many people to start speaking out. I just want to give that understanding at this moment in time without putting like a judgment onto it. Just see it for what it is. So how does all of this tie in with globalization and with Gemini and Sagittarius? We've talked a lot about Sagittarius, which is where the solar eclipse is. Sagittarius is about the belief system. It's about faith. It's about higher purpose. It's about it's the placement of gurus, of higher education. So it all ties in with information and knowledge. But what we notice is there's a big change around that and in that area at this moment in time. We do have a rebirth with the thanks to Mercury that's in the mix. So Mercury is the planet of communication. It also again relates to Gemini, and it's very much again related to how we think, and how we think has to change. That is what all of this is about. This is about big time mindset work for all of us to adapt to all of the changes. Gemini is also still the movement and the neighborhoods. And so this ties in what I said around the cars and the invention of cars and, traveling from one community to the other. And while Sagittarius is about really traveling the world, but Gemini is communication between the own territories. So it's shorter length. So it would be like, again, neighboring states, neighboring cities and towns. How are all of them communicating? And this is also why you will see that we're being asked to focus much more on the own community again. We also need to relearn that we are part of community and that we are all contributing. This is the essence of the age of Aquarius. I won't go into that too much because that's a long time still to develop into. But we will see this playing out in using like local produce, supporting your local businesses. All of that is actually on. It's growing. So how does all of this tie in with 2020? How can we make sense of this all? Now, one of the things I'd love you to know around this is that when, again, we pause, which is what happened, we were forced to pause. We were forced to slow down, even though many went for the information now to the internet. The internet will actually change how our brains adapt and work. This is neurology that will come into play, and the ways that the brain and the brain cells work. This is, again, also something for later. But what I wanted to bring across in this podcast is to share and let you see how a change of surrounding, how environment influences how you adapt to certain situations, how the circumstances that you grew up in, communities, cities, villages, areas you're part of, all contribute to how you see life. It's all about how this all builds your perspective. Your perspective is not the same as truth. It's your personal truth. There is definitely an area based with objective truths, and there's definitely a highest expression of that truth based on inner balance, values, morals, versus a lowest expression of that. So it's always those two ends of the stick, basically, that we can manifest in our own lives or in community. And as you can see, it's kind of new for us as a world. Like over 100 years ago, 120 years ago, it's not that long, actually. Even if you may feel it's ancient history, but it meant that we had to adapt how we take in information, how we weigh information, how we communicate to one another, how we see our place in community. Movement and how we move and between which areas we move, including lifestyles, ways of being, very much relate to movement. Or up until the internet, that was the main thing. It was the physical world that which is where we live, which is where your body is, which is where everything needs to happen. We've been taking advantage, of course, of the globalisation, of being able to bring produce from all around your world into every city, place on the earth, sometimes flying all the way from the other side of the earth into your town. And we've been taking. So this is why you'll see in regards to the supply chain, this is not new, you may have heard this, a lot came about like, oh wow, we don't do things at home anymore. We are very dependent on certain countries for, again, medicine was a big one. A lot of the medicine is produced in China. A lot of the Western countries didn't have those ways of creating medicine in their home country anymore. But this is the same for food and the types of food that we take into. We need to learn again to live in communities, to be closer to earth, to be where everything is actually happening. Now, this is the ideal situation because most people will now move into the online existence. In a sense, a lot of things will go online. It is a good market for that as well at the moment. And my main advice is, what are you taking in? What are the sources from where you're taking your information in from? Are you able to work with truth? Are you someone that easily believes everything? Or do you know how to examine what you want in your own mind? That's how it starts, right? Like, what are you allowing into your reality? And how are you showing up into the world? Is that in alignment? That's what alignment means. Is that in alignment to how you'd like to show up? So this is it for now. I just wanted to share the story of movement throughout the planet and what it does and how it impacts life around us. And when we slow down, what happens then? And how this affected the expansion of our thinking, the expansion of our knowledge, and then what knowledge can do to create new realities, come up with new ideas and different ways of life and being. All right, I hope you've enjoyed this. Please let me know your ahas. I'm always interested. If you want to find me, please go to Into the Moon House on Facebook. That's the group with a lot of interaction. You can find more podcasts on energy live streams there. And if you're interested in your own personal growth, in learning more about belief systems, and especially around resetting the energy, which is one of the specialties I have, then please consider looking into the Dark Moon Healing series. This is where you'll find themes that are channeled relating to the process Earth is going through, but we are on the front line there. We are on the frontier. And the themes in those healings will help you with stepping so much more into yourself and in a way that's rather gentle because it's deep healing energy coming from the sky and the moon. It will help you with the reset on relationships, issues around worth and self-love. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And I'm hoping to see you very soon. This was Laura from Into the Moon House. Bye, guys.